You and I wrap up this trip down the history of Seiyu units with this episode. After covering its unique, humble origins in the 70s to its full glory in the 90s, the boom in the noughties, the last generation of Seiyu units that was genuinely well received by fans, and its decadence, now it's time to cover the 6th generation of Seiyu units. This is the generation that you and I are experiencing, especially if you've been following Seiyu units with some attention. Time to check what units in this generation have been doing until now. Let's kick off this episode of Seiyu Lounge. Welcome to Seiyu Lounge. I am your host Vanessa, and today's topic is the 6th generation of Seiyu units, 2019 up until now. We're now in present time, or should I say, relatively present time. As I recorded this episode, March 2022, Seiyu unit fans are experiencing the 6th generation. This is a generation that doesn't have any pressure whatsoever to create music. Actually, there are no expectations by Seiyu fans for Seiyu to join or debut with a Seiyu unit. This, of course, means that there are fewer Seiyu units debuting, and those that do barely release any music. Let me talk you through this generation and what it has accomplished so far, plus which Seiyu units have impressed until now. How has been the music panorama for Seiyu units since 2019? With every single Seiyu wanting to make a solo debut, and many actually getting that opportunity even without anything to back such solo debuts, Seiyu units seem to be a thing of the past. Few are the Seiyu fans that remain supporters of Seiyu units. Few are the new Seiyu fans that know or support Seiyu units. The Seiyu and music industries aren't necessarily against the idea of Seiyu units, but it has stopped almost completely from being an appealing endeavor and turned into a gimmick or even something used solely to launch solo careers. The Seiyu units that remain active and debuted in the years before release music only with their fans in mind, no matter how few those may be. The new Seiyu units have started to pivot quite aggressively to a mix of J-pop and K-pop idol vibe, concept and/or sound as a way to grab the attention of young people and make Seiyu fans turn to them out of curiosity. Many are the Seiyu units that debut just to perform songs for their radio shows, not even bothering with performing live or anything of the sort. Given the complete absence of expectations for Seiyu units, there have been some emerging with bands, others going all out with the idol concept, between many more interesting things. Which music genres are prominent? Anything and everything that is trendy at a given moment. I'm talking about tropical house, Latin EDM, jazz, rock, pop, R&B, acoustic pop rock, ballads. Seiyu units that actually put an effort into their sound have experimented with some, if not all, these music genres. Seiyu units that serve only one purpose, providing music for the radio show they stem from, usually stick to bubbly pop and pop rock music, as those are the music genres that are more classically used as radio jiggles. Influences. More than taking inspiration from the Seiyu units that preceded them, Seiyu units in this 6th generation have a broader scope. They want to make an impact, attract people that love Seiyu, but also those that wouldn't normally come across them, much less know who they are and what they do, and convert them into fans. As such, Seiyu units in this generation have taken inspiration from J-pop and K-pop idols, in case they perform dance music or pop, and popular indie rock or even wildly popular J-rock bands in case the Seiyu team up as a band or perform rock music. This is quite possibly the generation that is trying its best to rewrite history, putting an effort into breaking out of that cage of Seiyu music and turning into well-known groups that attract not only Seiyu fans, but also the common person that loves music and wouldn't normally come across them. Worth noting that most Seiyu units stemming from radio shows and signed to minor labels don't care about what I just said. Their focus is solely on performing the songs featured on their radio show, or if not featured on their radio show, to give back to their fans. Only Seiyu units with major music label contracts or that are taking things really seriously, even though they are signed to a minor music label, care about making an impact beyond the Seiyu fanbase. Music quality. This topic must be approached from two different perspectives. The Seiyu units only performing music for radio shows and the Seiyu units actually taking the music industry pretty seriously. Seiyu units only performing music for radio shows have a generic sound with a standard mixing and mastering quality. It's the bare minimum to please their fans without spending crazy amounts of money to produce their music. There are Seiyu units stemming from radio shows that have started to take things quite seriously in terms of their sound and performances that end up having a genuinely high quality sound. This, of course, is rare. Now, if we're talking about Seiyu units signed to major music labels, still stemming from radio shows, let's not forget that, things are a bit different. I look at Kiramune's Seiyu units as a prime example of what has been changing as of late. Sparklu, Seiyu unit that you and I will cover in a bit, has changed its sound and image quite drastically to match the trends and possibly aim for more recognition even outside of the Seiyu industry. They went from a generic pop sound and boy next door concept to an intense J-pop meets K-pop idol sound and a masculine mature concept. And the budget used to create their music and produce their music videos is certainly more than you'd get with the simplistic music or simpler music videos the unit used to have. You also see that, although in a smarter, cost-effective way, with Sir Vanity. The band has a unique status among Seiyu units, but for all purposes of this episode, let's cover them in a couple of minutes. Sir Vanity, although not from a major music label, they are a self-producing band with their own music label, Vanity Records, have expensive-looking music videos that are actually quite cheap to make. Having a videographer in the band helps out delivering high-quality visuals without much of a cost. Same thing for their music. They have Satoru Kuwabara in their lineup serving as their bassist and composer. Kuwabara is just one of the most prolific and respected composers for everything 2D music. All this to say that there is a clear difference in quality and presentation between units that only perform music for radio shows and those that do that but decided to take a couple of steps further. Stemming from radio, anime, music projects or TV shows. As you may have noticed, up until now, radio shows are still going strong and so do Seiyu units stemming from those. You have many Seiyu units debuting tied to the music label Art Sonic, U-Make, Glass Slipper, Chashko, Kodamuro and more. A couple of others stem from Marine Entertainment, a label that was once in the vanguard with some of the most innovative and exciting Seiyu units in its lineup. Right now, Marine Entertainment houses M4 and Kashkomi. Seiyu units stemming from anime are non-existent. You still have the rare case of Seiyu promoting as 2D units, much like what EMU and Vice did, but you don't have Seiyu units emerging from anime series. Music projects are the major source of 2D units, not so much Seiyu units. Yes, there have been some 2D units that have held solo live tours, breaking out from being just a 2D unit to actually being a serious deal. The cases of Quartet Night, Trigger and Idolish 7. but those are still releasing music exclusively tied to the game or anime series, not so much having their independent activities outside of it. Gyroaxia could be another name you could bring to the conversation, seeing as the punk rock band is now signed to a major music label and promoting both using 2D characters and their seiyuu counterparts, with animated and live-action music videos. Until the day Gyroaxia promotes with the seiyuu as its members and not the characters' names, the band will continue to be 2D with a 3D existence, instead of being a seiyuu unit or seiyuu band. Additionally, although rare, there is one seiyuu unit stemming from a radio show. It's called Mosote Ichimon, and it's both incredibly clever and entertaining. Units that have been standing out in this generation. So I just ruled out a couple of 2D units that actually have a 3D presence. And I won't be covering the hordes of generic seiyuu units stemming from radio shows, because by describing one, I'm describing all of them. Which seiyuu units am I covering then? Sparklu, Servanity, and Trado. Seeing as we're still within the 6th generation, which is to say, when this generation wraps up, I'll create the definitive episode covering it, there may be more seiyuu units making their debut in the next couple of years. Then again, for a generation to change, there would need to be massive changes in the music industry for seiyuu and seiyuu units, which haven't happened so far. With that being said, I'm going to cover Sparklu, Servanity, and Trado in this episode. Let's start with Sparklu. Debuted on January 1st, 2019, Sparklu is a seiyuu unit signed to the music label Kiramune. The unit originally consisted of Yuto Uemura, Shun Horie, Shoya Chiba, Yuyoi Hozumi, and Takuto Yoshinaga. I say originally because as of January 1st, 2022, Shoya Chiba has graduated from Sparklu and Kiramune, having stated his want to do other things and being extremely busy as a voice actor as two of the main reasons he left both the group and amicably cut his ties with Kiramune. Before Chiba's departure, Sparklu went from the cutie bubbly pop seiyuu unit with the guy next door vibe to, in 2021, a mature, all-out, idol-like concept for their first mini-album, Daybreak. This is a seiyuu unit that started to follow Trignal's steps, bringing a bubbly pop sound that would please the common seiyuu fan. However, as the music industry started to shift its focus to seiyuu, especially after seiyuu artists like Mamoru Miyano, Shota Aoi, Soma Saito, and Yumo Uchida showed that there is an unreal level of quality in their music and performances, Sparklu started to change its approach. The seiyuu unit gradually left that bubblegum pop sound and started to embrace ballads and pop rock until they went all out with space disco, hip-hop, funk, and acid jazz. Their image that, up until 2021, was the standard for a seiyuu unit, changed completely, with all members donning unique hair colors, dressed in trendy clothing, and of course with a massive care for their looks to match the trends going on in J-pop music. Sparklu quickly started to appear on the radar of non-seiyuu fans. Just a quick look at the comments section on the music video for Dance in the Twilight is enough to notice J-pop and K-pop fans being extremely confused and impressed that Sparklu is not an idol unit but a seiyuu unit. In a way, Sparklu rising from a niche seiyuu unit that basically only seiyuu fans knew about, to a seiyuu unit that even those that don't know about seiyuu have come across is something akin to EMU or Vice's rise to fame. This is as exciting as you can get. And truth be told, even a CD earlier with Helvetica, Sparklu was already showing signs that they were starting to bring in new fans by slowly changing their sound and image. This was noticeable as the unit rose on the Oricon and iTunes charts. The complete revamp to the unit's sound and image, if it is something to stay for the group and not just a gimmick for that specific CD, Daybreak, may make it so that Sparklu turns into the most popular and quite possibly successful Seiyu unit out there. Now, for this last part about becoming successful, Sparklu would have to last long enough or sell insanely well in a short amount of time to overcome Hiroshi Kami and Daisuke Ono and Trignal. It's not an impossible feat, especially if Sparklu continues to go the trendy yet mature route as they did in Daybreak. And if they adapt quickly to any changes in the music industry that may happen in the next couple of years, then it's safe to say that Sparklu is on route to becoming one of the most successful Seiyu units. What started as just another Seiyu unit created to boost the image of young, up-and-coming Seiyu is now one of the most exciting Seiyu units around, one that, contrary to all others currently active in the Seiyu industry, actively attracts the attention of non-Seiyu fans, which is impressive. I have a feeling that in a couple of years you and I will be talking about this 6th generation and mentioning Sparklu as its representative unit. Not to mention the one that influenced the next generation of Seiyu units, which right now you and I don't even know when it will start. Sir Vanity. Debuted in 2020, Sir Vanity is a self-producing, independent Seiyu rock band fronted by Yuichiro Umehara and Yoshiki Nakajima. The band counts as well with renowned composer Satoru Kuwabara as its bassist and composer, as well as Taisei as their videographer. Now there is something quite interesting here. I said on episode 83 that Seiyu units are those comprised exclusively of Seiyu in its lineup. As you've just heard, Sir Vanity has a mixed lineup, bringing people from outside of the Seiyu industry into creative or active roles for them. So, is Sir Vanity a Seiyu unit? By my definition, they aren't. However, news outlets in Japan have been referring to Sir Vanity as a Seiyu unit, including them in the talk of the new dawn for rock bands in the Seiyu industry. So, for all purposes, Sir Vanity considers itself to be a Seiyu unit, and so do Japanese news outlets, so I'll go with that. Once again, my definition of Seiyu unit is quite restrictive on purpose, otherwise the last couple of episodes would have been crazy long, including as well 2D units. Back to the talk about Sir Vanity. As of writing these episodes, the band has released 5 digital singles and has announced the release of its first full-length album, Ray. What Japanese outlets have been writing about Sir Vanity is quite interesting. The band is at the core of a revival of rock bands fronted by Seiyu, something that is, believe it or not, quite rare. You do have Gran Rodeo and Screen Mode, and for a couple of years until the band announced its disbandment in 2022, Old Codex. But that was the extent of rock bands fronted by male Seiyu. You would have thought that rock music had gotten a good reputation following the outstanding work, shaping generations of artists that Gran Rodeo and Old Codex pulled off. But now, founding a rock band was even more niche than joining a Seiyu unit. I can understand this in a way because rock music is not popular among Seiyu fans, especially those that are used and enjoy 2D idol projects, which is to say the wide majority of the Seiyu fan base. And in another way, Seiyu prefer to make solo debuts and explore rock music by themselves. Just look at Yumo Uchida, Makoto Furukawa, Toshiki Masuda, Shugo Nakamura, Shunichi Toki, or Soma Saito. I look with excitement for Sir Vanity and what they can achieve. Umehara and Nakajima have vast experience as singers for 2D music projects. Nakajima is actually part of a self-producing band in You Make. Umehara and Nakajima are the lyricists for Servanity. They have the insane talents of Satoru Kuwabara, one of the most exciting and versatile composers currently active in Japan. Servanity's art direction is in good hands with Taisei. There is excitement for Servanity. They have no pressure to impress. They started the band to have fun and add a little bit of variety to the music panorama for Seiyu units. They have the potential to be a big band. Of course, at the moment of recording this episode, you and I don't know if the band will make it big in the future, but if everything goes right for them, I can see Servanity rising in popularity. Trado. To wrap up this episode is a unit that you'll have a faint idea you know about. Trado is a Seiyu unit consisting of Daisuke Ono and Takayuki Kondo, formerly known as the AT. This was unexpected. Usually when Seiyu units disband, they disband for good. There are no revivals, no last tours, no activities after the point in which it was settled that the unit was no more. So to see DAT emerging as Trado in 2021, just a couple of months after Marine Entertainment announced DAT's disbandment, was surprising. Even more because Trado is signed to the major music label Pony Canyon. Of course, Trado is still a Seiyu unit connected to a radio show, much like how DAT was, not changing a thing about Ono and Kondo's dynamic. What changed beyond the name and music label was the unit's sound. DAT was all about its catchy dance sound and at times shredding rock tunes and R&B ballads. Trado is all about its K-pop inspired sound with some hits and beats of Latin music in there. Trado is a Seiyu unit that caters to the newest generations, embracing a trendy sound while still going in line with DAT's danceable sound. Although much has changed for the unit, sales are still an issue as the duo has, much like all other Seiyu units, minus Sparklu, poor sales numbers. This can be due to how old the Seiyu are. Believe it or not, there are people that don't like to listen to music performed by veteran Seiyu, or for their looks not matching the fans' expectations. Honestly, it's hard to know what is in the head of potential fans and how to reach them. If it was easy to know that, then all Seiyu units would be insanely popular, which they aren't. But there are plenty of positives about Trado, and that's because sales aren't everything, especially in something as niche as the Seiyu unit industry. The unit showed that you can revive projects or units that didn't work before, you can have a trendy sound without having to be young, and it won't sound nor look tacky, and that when Seiyu genuinely like to work together, they'll make sure to team up down the line, even if they don't have the rights to their original unit name. Also, Trado being picked up by Pony Canyon shows that music labels right now, especially major music labels, are more than ever following the Seiyu industry with a lot of attention, trying to sign Seiyu talents, solo or units, because they see potential in them. This is something you couldn't say a couple of decades ago. Although you and I are still experiencing the decadence of Seiyu units, we're also seeing the birth of new diamonds in the rough, with Sparklu making a stance as a pop unit, Servanity showing that rock bands are not dead in the Seiyu industry, and with Trado showing that old projects can gain a new life because major music labels are willing to take those chances, recognizing talent in Seiyu. And with this, you and I wrap up this trip down the history of Seiyu units. As it is a trend when something is split into generations, you start to notice what were the struggles and challenges that were faced and overcome, and you can weigh in on how those ended up influencing the following generations. If you followed the past couple of episodes, you'll certainly feel that. What started as units created just for fun and to thank fans of radio dramas and anime ended up turning into a serious and incredibly professional side of the music industry for male seiyuu, with much more than thanking fans as the reason why seiyuu joined seiyuu units. Making money and embracing it as a side career were two other motivations appearing in the last 3 generations. There are also a lot of changes happening in the music industry for seiyuu units. Despite their lack of popularity, with seiyuu fans preferring to follow and support seiyuu as solo artists or just following 2D groups as opposed to seiyuu units continue to debut. And from time to time, those are as good as Kashkomi, Sparklu, or even Sir Vanity. That, as we all know, is a band, not necessarily a seiyuu unit, however, Japanese media has tagged them as such and they've embraced it. So you can have quality. You can still have seiyuu units created out of the sheer want to thank fans, which is more common for seiyuu units stemming from radio shows that are not massively popular. But you can't deny that the music industry has changed a lot since the 90s. Music labels, especially major ones, have started to recognize talent in seiyuu when they used to ignore them. Seiyuu themselves approach the music industry in a completely different way nowadays. As a result, you have more professional sounding and looking seiyuu units, but not the simplicity you had in the 90s. I've said it before, I feel like seiyuu units, especially now that have a good production value, for example, Sparklu, Sir Vanity, Trado, Kashkomi, and U-Make, are perfect to showcase the talents that seiyuu have. Those can be fantastic launching pads for a solo career, with luck even help boost a little bit their careers as voice actors. And if nothing like that happens, at least you know your favorite seiyuu is having fun performing music as part of such units. Now tell me, what do you feel is the place of seiyuu units in the music industry? Do you see a future for these, or do you feel the decadence right now will lead to their extinction? Let me know in the comments on YouTube, and remember, leave your comments as complex or as simple as they may be, and you can be featured on upcoming episodes of Seiyuu Lounge. If you enjoyed this episode and don't want to miss the Hand That Feeds HQ's weekly male seiyuu and music-related content, hit the subscribe button. I'll return next week with another episode of Seiyuu Lounge. Thank you for listening, and see you guys around.